Thank you, Rabbi Brown, for filling in. Okay. So we're about to talk about something called a shchiv meira, which we touched upon many times. Is that usually when you want to, give over your property and your possessions to somebody, you have to do a formal acquisition. Except unless somebody's called a shchiv meira. Shchiv is lying down. Meira is, from bad, meaning he's on his deathbed. There, the rabbis made a special a decree that they allowed a person who is dying to orally give over his possessions. And it's really two novelties. First of all, you can give things over orally. That's like never done before, really. And secondly, it might even be able to take effect after he dies. We'll have to see, which also doesn't usually happen. But for a deathly ill person, we allowed. So now, Misha Mace. So someone who dies, Venimtses daitiki. The Gemara says what a daitiki is. It's going to be an acronym for a kind of a document. Kshura al Yerecho. And now they find literally a document, tied to his thigh. Meaning they find a document in the area. So now they see what it says. And it says, I want to give my property over to this and this person. So Areza Eino Klum. That doesn't work. So now it says it in the shtar, so in the document. Now, the document you would have to give over to somebody. If you want to transfer something through the means of a document, so the fact that you found a document lying around, it's not going to help you. You have to actually, if you want to transfer through a document, you have to give the document over to somebody. So even though the Rashbam points out if a shchiv meira, someone who's on his deathbed, would speak out exactly what's written in the document, that would work, but that's because he's acquiring things through his orally, which is just the same as a regular person would do, formally. He would pass it over. However, if you put into a document, so you want to transfer through the means of a document, well, now the guy's dead, and a document can't be transferred after the guy's dead. To transfer things over, you have to be alive. It's not going to do by itself. So the fact that you found a document and the person just died yesterday, you don't say, oh, well, look, just like a person on his deathbed says something and it gets transferred over, so too, if we find it in a document, it'll get transferred over also. No, that doesn't work. So, yeah, fine. So that's the first halacha. Zika bala acher. However, let's say the shchivner, the person on his deathbed, wants to give over his property. La'achar bein min hayarshim, bein she'ein min hayarshim, dvarav kayamin. So he wants to give over property to either his inheritors, like his children, let's say, or a friend of his. So there, the things that he says, so that is going to work. Meaning even so now he's also using a document, but he says he's living now, he's on his deathbed, and he says, the things that are written in this document, I want to give over to you in the document that you're going to receive from me. So if he explicitly expresses that he wants to transfer over to you the things that are written in the document, so that's fine. Dvar of Kayam, and those words are lasting. So, because that's the same thing as a acquisition that we allow someone on their deathbed to do. So this case, you're also using a document, except in this case, you're alive, and you're saying the things that are in this document. So let's say in a document it says, property and property, it's over there, and property is listed over here. I want you to acquire the things that are in the document. So that's fine. That is going to be a valid transaction. If you are somebody who's on their deathbed, we allow you to go through with that. Yeah. Okay. So now we had this word daitiki. Daitiki. The first thing was someone died and you found a daitiki, which means a legal document. So why don't you just say legal document? Why do you say daitiki? Just say shtar. What's daitiki? Tanu Rabbanan, ezihi daitiki. What's a daitiki? So kol shekasava, anything which is written, datehe, this should be lemekam velihios. So this should be something which would uphold, and it would be. Meaning, it sounds like it's a formulation that this person uses to that it should be. Sounds like, I guess, whatever's here in front of me should be. And velihio sounds like maybe even after he dies, meaning maybe he wants these things to be acquired even after he dies. Yeah. After he dies. So the Mishnah it's a novel teaching because it says in the document you want, you want this to be velihios. After I die, you want this to be transferred over in an acquisition. But the problem was it was written in a document and the guy died before he gave over the document. So no good. Okay. Now, the Ezihi Matana. So now we're going to talk about, that was, a Shchiv Meira. Special rules governing someone who's on their deathbed, that his oral declaration can count as a acquisition. What about a gift? The Ezihi Matana. So a regular gift. So now, Kol Shekasava. So let's say someone writes in a gift. Kol Shekasava Mehayom Ula'achar Misa. I want this gift to take effect today and after I die. So says the Gemara. So what does that mean? You want it to take effect either today or after you die. What does that mean? So Ela Mehayom Ula'achar Misa Hu Dahavya Matana, but Me'achshav Lo Havya Matana. So sorry, that was a question. The Gemara says, Ezu Matana. Kol Shekasava Mehayom Ula'achar Misa. Ela Mehayom Ula'achar Misa Hu Dahavya Matana, but Me'achshav Lo Havya Matana. It sounds like it's only going to be a good gift if you write in. The Gemara says, what's a gift? How do you write a gift? And it says, if I write, it should take into effect today and after I die. Says the Gemara, that's the only way to give something. But if you just wrote, it should be a gift from today, then it's not going to be a gift. Of course it's going to be a gift. So, Amar Abaye Hakakamar. This is what it means to say. Ezu hi matnas bari shehi kim matna shchiv meira. That's what it means. What is a gift of a bari is a healthy person, a healthy, regular, living, healthy person, which is similar to a gift of a deathly ill person. So we're going to compare now a gift of a healthy person to a gift of a deathly ill person. Ezu matnas bari shehi kim matna shchiv meira. Delo kani ela le'achar misa. That's only going to be acquired after a person dies. Now remember, a regular person can't acquire things after they die. However, with a certain formulation, it's going to be similar to that. What is that formulation? Kol shekasava. You write in the document, Mehayom, I want you to take this beautiful orchard of mine from today, shekasava Mehayom ula'achar misa, and after the person dies. So now what that means is that he wants the person to acquire what we call the guf, the essence of the orchard today, the body of the orchard today. You own the house today. You can't live there till after I die. But the house is yours today. So the orchard is yours today, but you can't live there. Reuben tells Shimon, I want you to acquire the field, but you can't use the field, the peiros of the field, the fruits of the field. There's always the guf and there's always the peiros, right? Everything has that. A table has the guf. What's the guf of the table? The table. What's the peiros? The usage of the table, right? So if a guy writes it like that, so since he wrote Me'achshav, you do acquire it today. You do acquire it today. Practically, you won't be able to use it till after the guy dies. So now, if he wrote you only acquired after I die, that's no good. You have to be around for the acquisition. You can't have things take effect after a person dies. However, if you acquire it to him, if you give it to him today, you write Me'achshav, you're not going to be able to use it till after the guy dies. That's fine. Like a stipulation. That's already fine. But that's similar to a Shchiv Meira. Shchiv Meira also takes effect after the guy dies. In this case, also, it takes effect after the guy dies. Now, it doesn't exactly take effect after the guy dies, but it's similar. Because the guy can't use the house or use the field till after he dies. So that's why it is similar. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Yosef Rabba bar Rav Huna. So Rabba was sitting. Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, was sitting. The Achsadra in the, what does it say? Pavilion. What's a pavilion? A porch? The balcony? Gazebo?
A covered area.
A covered area. A gazebo. Okay. Yosef Rabba bar Rav Huna ba'Achsadra debei Rav, in the pavilion of the academy of the house of Rav. The Yosef V'Ka'amar. What do you say?
They just make it a fancier term.
Yeah, they like to do that. The Yosef V'Ka'amar, and they were sitting, and they said over Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the following statement: Shchiv Meira Sha'amar. So you have a person who is on his deathbed. I don't know if we're going to see later exactly how one qualifies that. Like, I don't. A doctor said a person has a month to live. Is that not considered his deathbed?
Oh.
You see the guys, our eyes are rolling up. I don't know exactly what the, but
It's different from a ghost.
yeah, ghost is right. It's interesting. A ghost could be someone who's fully living, but he's about to get burnt or hanged or Yeah. It's interesting. Okay, so to figure out exactly how, but someone who we evaluate is near his, near the end. Okay. 135b. Four lines up from the wide lines. After the coffee. Okay, whatever. Yeah. So Shchemirash Amar Kisvu Utenu. You have a person on his deathbed who says, Kisvu Utenu. So now he makes it a little tricky for us. Write down that you want to give a money, $1, $100 to Ploni. Write it down and then give it. So now, on the one hand, he told you to write it down into the document. So maybe he wants to give it over through the means of a document, right? You can transfer things by giving over a document. I say, I want to give Jared $3,000 and 2 witnesses sign. If I give over, this isn't real life. Yeah. So for 2 reasons, I don't have to give you, and I don't want to, but so if you want to do that, so you can just transfer over a document, right? To acquire a wife, you can also transfer over a document. So that might be real life. Okay. So if he says this though, write it down and give it over. So what did you mean? Did you mean you want me to write it down and give it over through the means of a document? Or did you mean, like every other shchemira, you want it to be acquired from now? So Shamar, kisu t'numana leploni umes. So when he says write it down and then give a money to Ploni, whatever amount of money to Ploni umes, and then he dies, ain kosin v'nosin. We don't write it and give it. Why? Shemalo gomer lahakno so ela b'shtar. Maybe the fact that he said to write down in the document, he's telling us, I want it to be given over through the means of a document. The rules of a shchivira is that he's allowed to orally say something, and it's considered the same way we would do a transaction. It's considered like a transaction. It's considered a transaction. But if he says to write down to a document, maybe he wanted to have it work through the means of a document. The problem was that he died, and you can't do things with the means of a document if you're not alive anymore. So the ein shtar la'achar misa. You can't give over a document after death. It doesn't work. So that is what they said in the name of Rav Yochanan. That when he said this funny language a little bit, we think maybe he wants to give it over through a document, but you can't give a document over after the guy dies. Okay. Amar lahu Rabbi Elazar. So now, Rabbi Elazar says, Izdarhu ba. Amar lahu Rabbi Elazar, Izdarhu ba. And you should be very cautious with this, meaning this is the halacha. So Rabbi Yochanan said something, and Rabbi Elazar very much validated it. Be very careful with this. This is the halacha. Don't let these shchivmiras say these formulations and then have it transfer over in the means of a document. The halacha is if he says write it down and give it over, it's not going to work. And you should be very careful with this halacha. Okay. Rav Shizvi, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rav Shizvi. Rav Shizvi Amar, Rabbi Elazar Amar Luhu Rabbi Yochanan, and some say it was Rabbi Yochanan, is Darhuba. So either it was Rabbi Elazar that said this, or it was Rabbi Yochanan that said himself. He said to be very careful with this. Meaning, Rav Shizvi said, Rabbi Elazar said the halacha, and Rabbi Yochanan said you should be very careful with it. So now it's going to make a difference in a second. But the first version was someone said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan the halacha. Rabbi Elazar said it, so be very careful with it. The other version was Rabbi Elazar said the halacha, and Rabbi Yochanan said be very careful with it. Why does this matter? Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, Kivasi the Rav Shizvi mistabra. The second version is much more logical. Why? I mean, the second version said that Rabbi Elazar said the halacha, and Rabbi Yochanan said, yes, we should be very careful with it. That makes more logical sense. Why? If you want to tell me Rabbi Elazar said the halacha, so then Rabbi Yochanan Itzrach Rabbi Yochanan la sudi aleha Rabbi Lazar. Then it makes sense that Rabbi Yochanan gave a validation to Rabbi Lazar, because Rabbi Lazar was Rabbi Yochanan's student. So if Rabbi Lazar said it and Rabbi Yochanan validated it, that makes a lot of sense. The teacher is validating the student. So Rabbi Yochanan is the teacher, Rabbi Lazar is the student, and is validating him. However, Ela Iamris, Rabbi Yochanan Amra, if you want to tell me that Rabbi Yochanan said it, Itzrich Rabbi Lazar las Ude Aleha, Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. If Rabbi Yochanan, the Rebbe, teacher, said it over, so why does he need his student's validation? So there's a hierarchy, right? The teacher says something, that's how it is. The kid peeps up and says, you're a very smart teacher. You said you did a really good job. I agree with you, right? That doesn't make sense. But if the student says something and the teacher validates him, that's great. I mean, the student's progressing. He's learning. Okay, so the ode, furthermore, Tashma Rabbi Lazar Amra, Rabbi Lazar himself said, the Shalach Rabin, that Rabin sent from Eretz Yisrael, Mishmed Rabbi Abo, in the name of Rabbi Abo, Have Yodim, you should know, Sheshalach Rabbi Lazar Legola, Rabbi Lazar sent to the exile, and he sent the following, Mishum Rabbeinu, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Shchiv Mirasha Amar Kisu Tenuman Leploni Umeis, someone who says this formulation, a guy in his deathbed says, write down in a document, I want to give $100 to Ploni, and then go give $100 to Ploni, and then he dies. Ain kosvin v'nosnin. We don't write it down in a document and then give it over. Why? Shemalo gamar laknoso ela b'shtar ve'ain shtar la'achar misa. Maybe he only wanted to give it over in a document, and you can't give over a document after the guy dies. So we're not going to write it down and give over the document after the guy dies. Okay. The Rabbi Yochanan. So this is all sent from Rabbi Lazar. The student sent this. The Rabbi Yochanan Amar Tibade, and Rabbi Yochanan said you should check it out. Now, Rabbi Yochanan himself agrees with this. We just had that. Either he said the statement or he validated the statement. But either way, he said that the statement is true. So what does it mean? Mai Tibade. What do you mean you should check it out? Check what out? There's nothing to check out. It's not a questionable statement. You, Rabbi Yochanan, yourself said this, and either you validated your student or your student validated you. But you're quoted as saying that this is the halacha. And now you're saying, check it out, you should check it out. It sounds like be weary of it. But it can't mean that because you yourself just said the halacha. So, ma'i tibadik, what do you mean you should check it out? What does that mean? Ki asar of dimi amar, he said the following. What it means to check it out, what it means like this. There was two things that were stated, and the second one needs to be checked out. Okay, so what does that mean? Ma'i tibadek. So Kiyasa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbi Yochanan, often they came and said over Rabbi Yochanan's teachings. He was the big rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. They would travel from there to Babylon, and they would say over the teachings in Eretz Yisrael. Kiyasa Rav Dimi, usually it's Rav Dimi and Ravin. Those are the two. Seems like the two main travelers in the Gemara, Rav Dimi and Ravin. So it's always Kiyasa Rav Dimi, Kiyasa Ravin. They're always coming from Eretz Yisrael, saying over the teachings that they heard. So it was before, like what's after. So he Amar Amar Daitiki Mivateles Daitiki. You can have this document, this Daitiki that says, that this should be whatever it says in the document should be after I die. So a document can nullify another document. So what does that mean? Shchiv Mirash Amar, a person on his deathbed says the following. Kisu tenu mana leploni. You should write down and give over a mana, amount of money to Ploni, umes, and then he dies. So now, Rowan, we check im kimiyapes kocho kosvin v'ivlav ain kosvin. So we see. So we sort of look at the document and we see. Okay, well, it's going to talk about it more, but basically we see that if we see that in the document he really wanted to give things over, or if we see that the person himself, we understand he really wants to give this over, so then we take the words that he said and we actually can use the words of kisu v'tenu to help him out. We actually can help out the person and we could give it over. However, if we assess that he didn't want to give over the money, he just said a statement of kisu v'tenu, so then the imlav ain kosvin. Now, how do you assess this? I'm not remembering right now. 1 second. So meaning, let's say the guy said he wants to give over something to the, Reuben wants to give Shimon something. Reuben's on his deathbed, and he wants to give, his property over to Shimon. And then he says, write it down into a document. So then the writing down into the document is just to help out Shimon. Not only do I want you to give it to Shimon, but let's document it also. That way Shimon will always have a document, just in case something comes up and the witnesses deny it, and who knows. So I guess that would have to have, a background to the story where he said over, he wants Shimon to have the property, and then he says, write down and give it to Shimon. Okay, that's very different than just he opens up saying, write down, give it to Shimon, and then dies. In that case, well, it sounds like you want it to be given over in a document, and we can't give a document when a guy dies. So sometimes
you're layering.
You're what?
You're layering.
Correct. So if you, layer a second statement on top of a first statement, we view the whole context, and we can actually write down the document, because the document's only being used as a proof over there. You're not giving over through the means of a document. You're only saying this because you want it to be documented. That's why you said it. But if we have no reason to assume that you just want it to be documented, and we have there's a real maybe if there's a way that we understand you to say that you want it to be given over through the means of a document, then we can't do that. But if we understand you want it to just be used as a proof, so then we could do that.
What about being used as a prompt? In other words, you're giving it to a guy.
Okay.
And you got Shimon, and you get Shimon.
Okay. Ashkenazi and Sephardi, yeah.
Yeah, and this guy's a bit of a shlemas. So you want to make sure that
He's also dying, but okay.
no.
Oh, Shimon, yeah, right, correct.
Yeah. Write it down, because I want you to give it to the right person.
Correct. Right.
I want to give it to Shimon, not Shimmy.
Shimmy, right.
It's enough. It's not a.
Right, that's an interesting question. Like, how much do you, if a guy just says, write down and give it over, okay, and then dies. So you think he wants to give it over through the means of a document, no can do. But how much do you need, with the Shimon being, in your case, the Shimon being a shlemaz will play a factor, meaning, how much reason do you need to assume he actually wants to give it, and then just to document it? Like, how much do you need, right? That's the part that I'm not clear about. It says miyat b'kocho. You want to help the guy receiving the present.
You got a 2-day walk or whatever to get there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's not
when, like in police work, when I have the right to go in and search this based off some sort of legal precedent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can search his bag, but I want to layer it. So when I go to court, I can say, I also got consent, right? Like, it's like, I told him I'm going to give him the money, but I'm also going to give him the documents.
Correct.
So I know there's no.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, anything to avoid confusion is always clarity is always the best. So
That's why we write things in precise.
that's right. And when you don't, you get so many daf of Gemara to figure out what he said. So okay. So 1 second. So we asked, he said the statement of Tibadek. We asked Mai Tibadek, and we brought a story that a daitiki kim mevatla daitiki. And then we said something else. We never explained that first part. So a daitiki mevatla daitiki means that so you have a shimmer, you have a guy in his deathbed, and he writes over, I want someone, I want Reuben tells Shimon, I want you to have all my property, and then he goes back and he said, actually, I want Levi to have the property. So if you do an actual acquisition, so you've already acquired it. If I give you this and you acquired it, I can't say, oh no, never mind, give it to Steve. It's done already. So a shchiv meira, even though we take his words on the same status as an acquisition, however, the halacha is he could retract. We're going to take the final words as his final statement. So, yeah. So that's what it means. That when it says tibadek, you should check it out. What it means is you should I guess I'm check out exactly what happened, because if you gave it to a second person, the second person will get it over the first person. And the other thing he said was that sometimes you miyapes kocho. If you understand from the context that the guy wants to give it over, really wants to give him the property, and he just said to write it down, then you could write it down. Okay, fine. So those are the two statements that were sent, and Rabbi Yochanan wasn't coming to argue on his own statement. He was just coming to say over this statement. Okay. Masib Rav Abba Bar Mamel. Rav Abba Bar Mamel asked a question now. So he asked a difficulty. What did he ask? Bari Sha'amar. So let's say a healthy person, regular person writes, Kisvu Tenu Mani Leploni. You should write down and give over a Mani Leploni, Umes. And then he dies. So obviously, Ein Kosim and Osman. Obviously, not going to write it down and give over to the guy. Because first of all, we don't take what the healthy person orally said with such a validity necessarily. And second of all, you can't give over a document after the guy's dead. So we say, oh, only a bari. What meaning? Why, if this halacha is true with a person on his deathbed, why did you say it over with a person who's healthy? It sounds like only a healthy person we don't do this. But hashchiv meira kosev v'nosnin. But a shchiv meira, something on his deathbed, if he would say that formulation, of course you would write the document and give it over to Shimon, which is against what we just said. We just said that you don't do that unless you see from the context. I guess the Gemara don't want to answer that. The Gemara could have answered, I guess. What do you mean? One case depends on the context. One case is not. Okay, the Gemara does not answer that. It's interesting. Why not? So I guess because the way he said it was just a very general statement. He doesn't say anything more than, he doesn't say if you see in the context. He just said a healthy person that says this, it's no good. Sounds like a person who's dying who says this, it'll always be good across the board. But that's against what we just said. Says the Gemara, the person who asked it has an answer. Who most love, who mefarikla. Rav Abba Bar Mamel asked the question, and he also found the answer to the question. What was the answer? Oh, the miyapes kocho. I jumped the gun. Okay. He says the case where he said that a healthy person, when he says this, you do not listen to him. So if Reuben's totally healthy, and he says, write down and give over. Write down in the document, I want Shimon to have my Cybertruck, right? So write down the document and give it over to him, and then Reuben dies. So we do, and he looked like a totally healthy guy, and then something happened to him. So then we don't listen. But even if in the context we know that he wanted to do that, it doesn't work. It's a special halakha by a shchiv meira, a guy on his deathbed, that we take his oral words very seriously. However, if you're on your deathbed and you say this, so then if we understand that you want to give it over, then we would write it down. Oh, so now we ask, Heichi dami miyapes kocho. So what exactly is the case of miyapes kocho? Kid Amar Rav Chisda, it's just like Rav Chisda said later on in about 15 daf from now. Rav Chisda said, Kid Amar Rav Chisda, it says, the kanina minei mosif al matanasa. If in the document, 1 second. So meaning over there in that context, they were writing a document, and he was writing down all of his property. Reuben wants to give all his property over to Shimon, and then as a gift. And then he adds at the end the kanina minei. The kanina minei is how they literally translated as, and we acquired from him. Right. So we affected an acquisition. Okay, meaning we acquire. Who's we? So Reuben's dying, and he wants the witnesses here to acquire for Reuben, who's dying, who can't do it himself. He wants the witnesses to do it for him and give over the property to Shimon. So now Reuben is writing a whole document. And then he writes at the end of the kanina minei that we the witnesses acquired from him. So now when you write the kanina minei that we acquired from him, you see that the guy really wants everything in the document to be transferred over, because he had the witnesses right there. We acquired from him, meaning you really want this acquisition to take effect. Hachanami the Amar af ksuvu v'chasumu v'havule. So too in our case, if you say you should write it down, sign it, and give it to him. So when you say you should write it down, sign it, and give it to him, then you see what the guy means. He didn't just say, write it down and give it to him. You should write it and you should sign it and give it over. So there you see that the guy really wants the property to be transferred over to Shimon. And in that case, if the guy would die, we would write it down and give it over.
Probably cover this in 15, right? Like that works for the get too.
Oh, we're about to say that. Very good. At some point we're about to say that. I guess I was tired preparing. I don't remember where, but yeah, it talks. It didn't come in so early last night. Okay, anyway, so giving comes up. Okay, so let's see. Itmar, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha. Halacha is kosvin v'nosnin. Just like Rabbi Yochanan said, that in the case where we're going to miyapes kocho, we want to help out the receiver, and we have reason to assume that, like he just said, ksuva v'chasuma. If the guy says, write down, sign it, give it over, then we would, if the guy were to die, we would write it down in the document and transfer over the property over to Shimon. And so to Rav Nachman said, and Rava said in the name of Rav Nachman, the halacha is kosim v'nosnin. Yeah, okay, fine. New mission, maybe Gittin will come up at some point. Oh, it's the first Gemara on the next mission. That's where it is. Yeah. Hakosev nechasav lebanov tzarich sheyichtov mehayom ulo achar misa. Someone's writing over, regular person's writing over to his children. He wants to give all the property over to his children. So the Rashbam fills us in what happened. So a guy got married for a second time, and he doesn't want all of his property to be to go into the ksuba and have his wife get everything when he dies, because then his children from the first marriage are not going to get anything. So he wants to write to the children from the first marriage they should get something in the event that he dies or he divorces his wife. His second wife won't get everything. Rather, the first kids, the kids from the first wife will also get something. So hakosev nechas lebanov tzarich sheyichtav, you have to write mehayom ulachar misa, that it should be acquired to you today and after I die. Kind of like we had earlier. If you don't write from today, we'll see, it's going to be a debate, but simply understanding, if you don't write from today, you can't have it acquire for you after you die. You have to write from today. Now today, people are still using your property. So what you mean is, I want you to acquire it today, and then the usage will be after the guy dies. That is Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That is the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Eino tzarich. We'll see why he says it. You don't have to write mehayom. We'll see why he says that. Okay. Hakosev nechasav lebano. Hakosev nechasav lebano. So you're writing over, you want to give over your property to your son. La'achar moso. After the person dies. Ha'av eino yachol limkor. Mipnei shehein ksuvin leben. So if you read it over, you can't go sell the property now. It's already been written over to your son. V'haben eino yachol limkor. Mipnei shehein b'shus ha'av. Now the son, who officially owns the property, but does not own the usage of the property yet, right? The father wrote, this mansion will go to you from today, and the usage will go to you. You have living rights after I die. So the father can't sell it because it belongs to the son, and the son can't sell it because he doesn't own the usage yet. However, if the father were to sell it, what would happen? It would be sold until the father dies, and at that point forward, it'll go to the son. So machar ben, if the son were to sell it, then the buyer gets nothing until the father dies. Once the father dies, then it's fully the son's. Then the buyer can get something. But that's going to come up in I think 2 daf. But for now, we're going to go on the first part of the Mishnah. That if you want to write over in a document to your children, you have to write, you acquire from today and after I die. Now that was a machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, it just works. If you write from today and after I die, it works. We have a case in Gittin, Hatnan, very good, Jared. Hatnan mehayom ulachar misa. You do the same thing in Gittin. You write from today until after I die. He says, here's a get from today and after I die. A real nice guy, yeah? So now what happens? It's a get ve'eno get. Great. It's a suffix get. It's a get in doubt. Now she has no idea. She divorced or not divorced. So what's the halacha? Suffix divorced, right? So if she were to get remarried, it's going to be a questionable marriage. If the guy dies, you can't do yibum. She can't marry the brother. You have to do chalitza because maybe there's a yibum, but maybe there's not a yibum. So chalitza lo misyabemes says. So what are you telling me that mehayom achar misa is such a good way of saying things? Well, we don't know when you say mehayom achar misa. We don't know what you meant. You meant from today. You want it, and then la'achar misa you get the usage, or you're retracting. You want it today. Oh no, actually I want it la'achar misa. Right? Is the la'achar misa a retraction of mehayom? After I die is a retraction of today, or it's just a two-stage acquisition. From today you own it. After I die, you get to use it. But we don't know. What we see in Gittin, it doesn't work that way. Says the Gemara, yeah, there's a big difference between Gittin in this case. There's no two stages of a divorce document. A divorce is one stage. Here you go. I raised that Gittes. In our case, there are two stages. You can acquire something, it itself, today, and the fruits, the usage of it, after the guy dies. That's going to be the difference. By a get, we're not sure. Is it a stipulation? It's really going to be a get. It's going to be a get from today after I die. So after he dies, retroactively, it'll be a get from November, whatever. So, here's a get from election day 2024 after I die. So from election day, she's going to retroactively be divorced for whatever halachas that's going to have. Or maybe he's saying that, no, I meant to say that you're only divorced after I die. Or it's a chazar, aval hacha, when it comes to acquiring, hachi kamerle, this is what he means to say. Gufa kani mehayom and peri lachar misa. Here you have a two-stage process. Very understandable why a person would do this. Because you can't acquire everything after the guy dies, because you can't acquire things after you die. And you want to use everything today. So you're not going to say it's all yours today. You'll do it in two stages. So when it comes to giving over something when it comes to acquisition, there mehayom ulachar misa is going to make sense. Rabbi Yossi Omer Eino Tzarech. Rabbi Yosef says you don't need to write down mehayom and it's still going to work. How could that be? You can't acquire things just la'achar misa. Rabbi Baravua Chalash. Rabbi Baravua was sick. All the Gabe Rav Huna. Rav Huna went in to go visit him. Rav Nachman Amar Le. All the Gabe Rav Huna Rav Nachman. No, all the Gabe Rav Huna. Rav Huna went in. Rav Nachman Amar Le, and Rav Nachman told him. Rav Nachman. No, all the Gabe Rav Huna. It should be all the Gabe. It should be plural. I don't know. All the Gabe Rav Huna Rav Nachman. Amar Le Rav Huna Rav Nachman. Rav Huna told Rav Nachman, Bo mine, I have a question for you. Halacha Rabbi Yossi, ain't halacha Rabbi Yossi. This that you can write something over and give it over to your sons and not write from today and only write after I die is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Does the halacha accord with him or does the halacha not accord with him? So Amar Le said to him, I don't understand. Time de Rabbi Yossi lo yadana. I don't understand what Rabbi Yossi is saying. You want me to tell you if the halacha is like him or not? I have no idea what he's saying. How can you acquire something la'achar misa? It doesn't work that way. Of course you have to write from today la'achar misa. So you want to ask me if the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi? I don't understand I don't get it at all. So time with Rabbi Yossi lo yadan halacha yibayimine. He said, listen. He said, Amar Le, ad bayimine. You ask him you ask the person who's like Rav Huna who the halacha is like. I halacha ilo, and I'll explain to you what the reason is. Just find out what the halacha is like. He's not well. Maybe he's going to be dying. I don't know. Find out how we hold. So they were okay with not understanding things. They were able to move on in life. You can ask someone a question. He can answer. You don't understand. And you can actually figure the explanation afterwards. Yeah. Nowadays you have to understand everything or else you can't move on in life. Okay. So the time look, I'll tell you the reason. So Bo'omine. So he asked him, Amar Le, Hachi Amar Rav. Rav said, Halach Rabbi Yossi. The less understandable of the two opinions, the halacha is like him. So now, I guess, that finished their halacha discussion of Bikur Cholim. So now, Basar Denafku, they left. They went in to visit him, and while they're there, what's the halacha like? But they're not going to start talking and fighting and learning right in front of him. So they left. Basar, and now they asked, okay, listen, what's the shot? Tell me the shot. Amar Le, like this. Hainu time to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says you don't need to write from today on the document. Why? The Amar, a concept that comes up also in Gittin, in general, in documents, I think. Zmano shel shtar mochiach alav. The date of the document is mochiach. Mochiach is a proof. It proves it. So if you want to acquire something, you write a document. I'm gonna give over to Jules a whole bunch of things, and then or not me. Reuben says over to Shimon. He's gonna give us all over after he dies. He'll give it over to his children, but he doesn't write mehayom. So, but the document says the date. So obviously that's what it means. Let the date of the document itself be a proof. Zmano shel shtar mochiach alav. Tanya Namihaki. Let's support this novel idea that we're going to apply over here with a brisa. Tanya Namihaki. Rabbi Yossi Omer Eino Tzarech. Rabbi Yossi says Eino Tzarech. Why he? Meaning Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah doesn't say, just Eino Tzarech. Doesn't say more. But the brisa, which often expound on the Mishnayos, they say more. Rabbi Yossi Omer Eino Tzarech. Why? Mipnei shezmano shel shtar mochiach alav. So that explanation that he said over was actually Rabbi Yossi himself is explicit in the brisa. Remember, they didn't always know the brisas. The brisas were all the things that were outside the Mishnah. They didn't have access to it always. But we found a brisa that says explicitly the reasoning of Rabbi Yossi. Okay.